Okay, one of the nice things about Gdevelop is those behaviors. So we can give this character the ability to move. So we'll double click on the player character. We'll select behaviors, very similar to like we did with the platform. We'll select add a behavior to the object. We'll select platform behavior, and then we'll just leave all of this default. We could change this if you want it. This is good how it is. We'll select apply. Okay, so with that done, we'll go to this upper right, to this preview button. Now we can see our player character, and when I move the controls, the player character moves. The animation isn't set yet, though you can see the player character is already doing their idle animation. So we need to adjust things. Well, actually we don't. We don't actually need, I was thinking we need to adjust this to make it look like the player character is on here, but we actually don't, since we're going to make this be invisible. However, we do need to set the animation up for the player character so that it animates when it moves. Okay, to set that up in Gdevelop, the way I think of Gdevelop is like the left is the creative. So left is like here. I say left, right, because this is like the creative part here. This is the programming part here. So on the left side, you do creative things. You bring in your assets, arrange them, set them up. On the right side, you do your programming. So I'm going to left click on the events, and that's how we program things in Gdevelop, is with events. This right here says there's no events here. Events are composed of conditions and actions. Add your first event using the first buttons of the toolbar. So what we want to do is select this button here. And now we have our first event, which is composed of a condition as well as an action. Basically what the condition says is when you do something, and then the action says what to do when this condition happens. Okay, so one of the things we can do, let's add a condition. The first thing we'll do is we'll make that green ground appear to disappear. I guess disappear. So we'll select scene, and then at the beginning of the scene, the conditions are pretty well set up. They make sense. So when the scene starts, the scene is what we're working in. So we're saying, remember I told you on the left, we say, when something happens, and then the right says what to do. So what we want to happen here is we're going to select add action. We're going to go to common actions for all objects, visibility, hide. What we want to do is hide this ground. So we'll select OK. So we're saying at the beginning of the scene, hide that ground. So the ground will still be there. It'll just be hidden. So if we select to go to the creative side and then select the preview, now our character looks like the character is just on the ground, which is what we want. Okay, what we're going to do is go back to our programming. And we want to make a new event. Now we can make conditions that are connected to this one event here as well as actions. We don't want to do that. To make sure we make a whole new event, you want to make sure you have this entire event selected. You can tell that the entire event selected because you'll see this blue line basically highlighting the whole event. So with that done, you'll select add new event. So we have a separate event here, and that's what we want now. So what we want to do is we're going to go add condition, and then we're going to platform behavior, right? So we're going to select there, and basically what we want right here is these give us different ways of setting up the character, a character that has platform behavior on it, how to work with it. So we want to choose the player is on the floor. And, well, we set choose floor. Now we let Gdevelop know we want to work with the player. So then we'll select OK. Okay, there's multiple ways of setting things up in Gdevelop as well as the programming side of Gdevelop. We want to set things up to make them easy to understand and fairly, we want to do the least amount of work that we have to do to get things to work right. So one of the ways we can do that is this is an event. So what we can do is we can make sub-events that are connected to this. So this would be the overarching thing. Like we're like, look, when the player is on the floor, we want something to happen, right? So what we want to do now is we want to add a sub-event. So this is the event. This is a sub-event. So we'll select here. And what we want to do now is say when the player is on the floor as well as the player is moving. So we'll select here, platform behavior, and then we'll select is moving. And then we want to work with the player. So what we want is Gdevelop to say, okay, when the player is moving, we want something to happen. And that thing that we want to happen is we want the player to walk. So we're going to select add action. We'll go to sprite, animations and images, change the animation by name. We're going to select player. Then we need to choose the name. I think I named it just walk. So then we'll select OK. I'll go back, double click on the player. Yeah, so I just named that walk. Select apply. Apply didn't do anything. I just clicked apply to get out of that right there. So now when the player is moving, the player is going to walk, right? So when we want to set something up for when the player isn't moving, we just invert this. So what we can do here is we can actually copy this, use the same amount of visual code to set up the idle. So we'll right click, select copy, and then we'll select to make, actually we want to select here first, the main event, and then go to sub event to make another sub event. So then we'll left click here, and I have this whole thing highlighted blue because I copy this whole thing. I want to paste that right here. So I'll right click and then I'll select paste. And then what I can do now is double click here, select invert the condition. So I'm saying when the player is not moving, I want something to happen. And what I want to happen, now I can click on this word and just go right here, or I can double click to go inside of here. So if I double click, we can work here, or we can select here. So I'm going to change this to idle. I'm going to, oops. All right, so I'll just click off that. So now this is set for idle. Okay, so we have things set up. So when the player is on the floor and the player is moving, the player will walk. When the player is not moving, the player will do its idle pose. However, we need to set this character that only faces to the left. As far as the sprites, we need to tell Gdevelop to flip the character when the character goes to the right. So the way we're going to do that is go to add condition, keyboard. We'll select key pressed. We'll scroll down and we're looking for the right button. So there we go. So we're saying when the right button is pressed, we want something to happen. So we're going to go to add action, sprite, effects, flip the object horizontally. We want to work with the player, and then we want this to flip. We want this to flip because the character is facing towards the left, how the sprite is set up. So when we press the right, we want this to flip to the right. So now we want when the character is going to the left for the character not to flip. So the way we can do that is we'll select this main event. We're selecting this main event so that when we add a sub event, it'll go underneath here, but still be connected to this main event. So with this selected, we can tell this is selected because it's highlighted blue. We'll select this sub event. And because the information is mainly going to be the same, we're just going to copy this and then paste that to here. So we're going to right click, select copy, and then left click here, right click, select paste. So this information is currently the same. However, very quickly, we can double click, look for the left button, select OK, and now for this flipping, we could select here. I'm just going to go inside, and we're going to select activate flipping, no. So then we'll select OK. Okay, with that set up, we're going to go to the creative mode of Gdevelop. We'll select the preview button. So now when I push to the right, The character moves to the right, as well as to the left. The character is moving like they're supposed to move. So now when the character gets to the end of the screen, the character, will walk off the screen. We want to have the camera actually follow the character. So we'll select to go back to our programming side of Gdevelop. Okay, in Gdevelop, this condition, when we put something here, it says when something happens, the action says what to do. What happens when we don't put something here? When we don't put something here, Gdevelop will constantly look to do this action. That's what we want in this case. So we'll leave this blank. We'll go to add action. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to layers and cameras. And what we want to do is select center the camera on an object within limits. So we'll select that. We'll select the player. For this, we want to press 0. We want to press 0 for here. For this, we're going to just put in a low high definition setting here, 720, and then we'll select OK. Okay, I typically have to experiment a little to get this to be right. Let's go to the creative view. We'll select preview. So now when we have our character walk, it's actually pretty good. Okay. So we have this space right here. Okay, we're going to go back to the programming side of Gdevelop. Okay, so our height is actually 600, so let's try putting in that height. The default Gdevelop is 800 wide by 600 high. So we'll put in 600 here. Go back to our creative view. Yeah, not work, so excellent. Okay, so what we can do is place our enemy character. So we'll left click on the enemy character, bring the enemy character in. We'll bring it over here for now. We'll hold shift to constrain the enemy character. We're trying to make it be basically the same size as the player. Now I want the enemy character to face towards the player. Okay, I think we can do that fairly easily by going to our programming and see this at the beginning of the scene. So I'm going to go to add action. And I'm going to go to sprite, effects, flip the object horizontally. I'm going to select the enemy. And I'm going to select yes. So I'm going to select OK. So what we're saying is at the beginning of the scene, hide the ground as well as flip the enemy character. So we'll go back to here. I'm going to put the enemy character over here. Just hold the middle mouse button to move this. I want them to be around here like that. So let's see. So our player character walks over. Yep. An enemy character is not doing their idle pose for some reason, but they are flipped. Okay, there were some issues with the naming of the enemy sprites, which I fixed in editing. Okay, while we're here in the creative mode of Gdevelop, what we're going to do is hover over the screen, right click, select scene properties, and then we're going to go to edit scene variables, and we're going to select this plus button. Then we're going to name this scene variable combo. And we're just going to put in 0 for here. And then apply that. Okay, what we're going to do now is set up so our main character can punch. So we're going to go to our event. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this event. And we're selecting this. We're making sure this is fully highlighted so that we can make a new event. Okay, so what we're going to do here is set it up so that when we press a button, our character punches. So we're going to go to Add Condition, Keyboard, Key Pressed. I'm going to use the C key, and then I'm going to choose C, and then select OK. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Action. Remember in Gdevelop, the condition basically says when something happens, the action says, you know, what to do when that happens. So we're going to go to Add Action. We're going to go to Sprite, Animations and Images, and then we're going to select Change the Animation. We're dealing with the player. So we're going to select here. We're going to select Equal. And then for here, we're going to put 1. And then we're going to press OK. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the creative part of Gdevelop. We're going to double click on our player. See how the idle animation says 0? Okay, this is 1. It's actually a set when we press the C key to activate this animation. We don't want that. We actually want this animation too. I brought you here because I wanted to show you, you know, just how each animation has a number. And that's what we're going to be using to work our way through our animations. So I'm going to click Apply. We didn't change anything. I just clicked Apply to get out of that menu. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to double click here. And I'm going to change this to 2. I'm going to press OK. So now I'm going to go to the Preview button. And now when I press the... interesting... Surprised. C key is pressed. Change the number in animation to 2. Okay. Okay, there's good news and bad news. I found out what was causing this not to work. There's something about the platform behavior that tends to cause things like when you add things like punches, the platform behavior not to work. So we're going to have to remove that behavior. The good news is this tutorial is going to be more in-depth, and our character is actually going to have more ability to move around because of what we're going to change to make this work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the creative part of Gdevelop. We're going to double click on our player. We're going to go to behaviors, and then we're going to select this trash can to get rid of the platform behavior. We'll select OK. We're going to select add a behavior to the object. We want to add a top-down behavior. And then what we want to do is take away the default controls as well as the rotate object. And then we're going to select apply. Just going back to make sure that behavior is on. Okay, it is. Okay, now we're going to go back to our events page. And what we're going to do is we have these, we'll be able to keep this. So these are currently connected to this event. We're going to select this blue and move these up. And by doing this, we're effectively disconnecting these sub-events and making them their own events and taking them away from this. For this event here, I'm going to select this event, delete it. When I delete this, the sub-events will be deleted as well. So I'm going to right-click and then select delete. Okay, so what's going on here is when we press the right key, this flip horizontal is still fine. We're going to go to add action. We're going to go to top down movement. And then we're going to go to movement. Okay, not movement. Controls. We're going to select simulate right key press for the player. And then we're going to go to add action, sprite, animations and images, change the animation by name, select the player, and then we're going to select, well, type in walk. That's what we're doing. So we'll select OK. And then what we can do is we'll select here, right click, copy. And when we hover over this add action, we get this paste action. So we'll select that. And then we'll select here, right click, copy, hover here, move this over, then left click to paste that. Okay, so what's going on here is we're saying when the right key is pressed, simulate pressing right. This will make the player walk right, as well as this will activate the walk animation. We copied this here. We need to flip still. We copied this from above, so what we need to do is double click here. And then we need to select simulate left key press. It's the player, and then we'll select OK.